It's green. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So, good afternoon, everyone. I understand that it's going to be a quite tough session after the lunch break. So, please stay alive and try to contribute to this session. If I'm not mistaken, this is going to be the third session co-organized by three sister projects, HESTIA, Accept, and Sender. Actually, in the third session, we will be discussing about energy communities for smart energy transition, and actually we would like to learn from these three projects, the examples that and the result that they managed to deliver within their project lifetime. So actually, I had prepared a slide to introduce energy communities, but I think that you have already covered that part, some reference to directives relevant to energy communities, where they introduced and so on. So I think that it doesn't make sense to spend time on that slide. I would like to give more time to the speakers and to the more interesting part, which is going to be the roundtable discussion. So I would like at this point to introduce the speakers and participants to our session. And I would also like to thank the audience for joining us at this very interesting session, where actually we are concluding with the results of these three projects. Today with us, we have joining us to speak about the results of HESTIA is Andrea Martinez, Deputy Managing Director at SINLOC and coordinator of the project. Next, we'll hear about the Accept project, and here we have three speakers, Antonis Papanikolaou, Sivert Sommer, and Ricardo Tofanin, if I pronounce it correctly. Antonis Papanikolaou is a program manager at HYPERTECH SA and actually assuming the role of coordinator for the Accept project. Sivert Sommer is the chairman of Energy Summon, if I did pronounce it correctly, the national umbrella organization for energy cooperatives in the Netherlands. He's also a board member of ResCoop EU, which is actually the European Federation of Energy Cooperatives. Ricardo Tofanin is an energy engineer and project manager at IM, a Swiss distribution system operator, and his expertise lies in demand-side flexibility management and energy system optimization. Finally, we do have with us together today Dr. Christian Kunze, a senior energy management researcher at Smart Innovation Norway, and coordinator of the Sender project, who will share the project objectives, key use cases, and innovative technologies implemented within the project, and at the end provide some insights and results for the Sender project. So at this point, I would like to invite our first speaker, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonis. And can you hear me? Maybe. Maybe it's better. That's very kind of you. Okay. Hello. Thank you all. And we have two challenges. I have to keep you awake, and you have to keep me awake, because I have a 9-hour time lag, jet lag. So we'll have to work on this together. But also I have another challenge that those that preceded me in HESTIA have also put out, let's say, a number of spoilers. So I've decided to change slightly the pitch of my presentation and focus mostly on what comes next, not on what we have done. Obviously, I will touch upon what we have done, but with a perspective of what could come next, or what should come next, or what should have happened. I mean, the important work which has been done, and I will only put up a slide just to remind us the project, because I think this slide doesn't come up. So it was a project with 7 million euro, 7.5 million euro funding, 47 months. We had to ask for an extension for COVID and a lot. 19 partners, 9 countries, 3 pilots. So high complexity project, large consortia, as I mentioned, with some, let's say, unexpected events, COVID, then we also had war, and life. I mean, life is full of uncertainty, so a lot of things happen in the project, but we're all managed. And a lot of unknowns. I mean, basically, we were going into 3 countries with different legal frameworks, with different attitudes, priorities. They've been touched upon in the engagement contribution that Gelike gave before, and also technical. And we had to join the dots as we went along. And in joining these dots, obviously, it's easier to do it retrospectively, always. So I'm going retrospective now, and I'm thinking how we kind of probably joined the dots. And let's say this issue of demand response, i.e. local energy communities, is a bit of a chicken and egg dilemma. Okay, where do we start from? The technical solution, the business model, the engagement process. Probably, what we kind of, I'm not saying missed, but we kind of realized maybe not as early as we should have done, is the purpose of the local energy community. Okay? So the real focus point is, should be, in these projects, probably, first and foremost, why does the energy community set in place? What is its purpose? And therefore, what are the, let's say, actions which have to be taken to induce behaviors which are coherent with that purpose in the engagement, let's say, pillar? What are the solutions which are technical solutions which have to be driven by the engagement, the purpose and the actions, and therefore the technical specifications that we have to give to the platform, with a number of dilemmas that we'll talk about later. And last but not least, what is the business model, or more precisely, the value creation model and value capture model? How do you create value, and how you capture it, and who captures it? Okay. So probably if I had to, with all the 19 partners, go back 47 months and let's say rewrite the abstract or the proposal, I would start with 2 key questions. What is a viable local energy community value creation, value capture model? And how does technology and process, i.e. engagement, come in to help to create that, okay? And the second question is, given the above, what should be today's technology that I have to put in place? So what is needed today, what is needed tomorrow, what is needed in 2-3 years' time, okay? So putting also the technology in, obviously experimenting what comes in the future, but deploying today what is actually needed in the engagement process. And this is defined also by norms. I mean, just to give a practical example, some of the things that we've developed, they're really cool, they're really potentially groundbreaking, but they're not applicable. So you can't really use them, and so you cannot create value through them. And it's also difficult to engage people on something which doesn't create value, okay? This doesn't mean that the technology is not good, that it doesn't create theoretical value. It does, it theoretically create value, but it doesn't probably help as much in the process right now. And so going back to this issue of purpose, the purpose of the local energy community, which we know there is a technical purpose. Okay, we need to load balance, we need to load shift, but there's something deeper to that. Why on earth people get together in a local energy community? They have to have a stronger purpose. And it can be, those that preceded me have talked about, let's say, 2 extremes, and with a number of middle points. There's a cost benefit, which is probably then more individualistic, okay? And there is a more community benefit, okay? Or make the community more resilient, or give to the community some value, okay? Which is more common. If we have these two extremes, and probably we have some middle points, this is where the purpose has to fall in, okay? We have to define the purpose, because really those two things drive everything. It should drive the value creation model and should drive the value capture model, which means is how you capture value and who captures it, okay? I'm taking for granted that there is a value, let's say shared value, hygienic value, which is environmental, okay? So maybe with different intensity, different members of a local community might feel that that is a priority. There were the personas that were shown before, I think, by the, what was it, the Accept project, I think it was, yeah, which had the 4 personas, which clearly describe, let's say, also the social security, also the geopolitical security, no, which is, it is relevant for sure. But I would say, just allow me, as an assumption, on keeping them as an hygienic need, okay? Everyone wants that, okay? So, okay, we have a purpose, but how do you make, so the question, I go back to the first question, how do you make a local energy community viable? And a local energy community is viable, basically, if it has scale. It has to have scale in members, and has to have scale, and/or has to have scale in energy assets that owned by the local energy community, not only joined by the energy community. The two factors which create sustainability for an energy community, the ability to create value, okay, are basically scale and, to a certain extent, the capability of owning and operating assets, energy-producing assets, or energy storage assets, energy-related assets, okay? And I might have sounded as if I have digressed too much from a project, so I'm going back to a project. And so in Berchidda, you have the conditions potentially to scale, because Berchidda is a local energy community which, if it takes scale, it can work at grid level, at a municipal level, a few thousand users, inhabitants and users, and it has, if I remember well, 2 or 3 million euros of potential investments to be made by the local energy community. This is on a side project with respect to HESTIA, but it is one of the provisions of the municipality. And so it could have scale. It could have scale, it could create those conditions, both in terms of members and in terms of ownership assets. Verhout in the Netherlands, on the other hand, is a really cool model. It's an ESCO model. It is probably not so much about, it's more individualistic in a certain sense as a model, okay? But it has a scalability problem because it's, at the end of the day, it's a housing estate, so it cannot scale that much, okay? I'm bringing an example which not in HESTIA, but is, as I said in my intro, I'm building also on some over 60 projects that we are conducting on setting up local energy communities. And I'm bringing Florence. Florence is a model which has scale, because the city of Florence is large. It is working at municipal level. It will own assets. It will be based on a community foundation, so a no-profit entity that is the local energy community. And it's based on creating and capturing value for the community, okay? Just to give you a number, it could create more or less 600, 800,000 euros per annum of social dividends, which for a community is good money, okay? So, legs are viable if they scale, but also the demand response solutions are viable if they scale. This is a low margin business, okay? If we want to, if any of us wants to invest in a startup or a company that wants to deploy demand response technology, is a low margin business, full stop. You have to have major investments, probably keep the investments running, and you have to have thousands of licenses, thousands of users, thousands of megawatts balance, okay? So again, it goes back to members. We need large communities because, I'm assuming that the demand response softwares, we're talking about energy communities, so they are being sold to energy communities. I'm not at the moment obviously addressing the issue of these type of solutions being sold to DSOs for, let's say, for other types of business model. I'm working on the energy communities. So you need members, users, i.e. license, and you need, again, megawatts of production to be load shifted, okay? And this brings, again, the point I was making before, that the demand response solutions, the IT solutions, obviously we have to innovate, we have to look forward, but the TLR 8s and 9s that have to go out now are the ones which are obviously compliant with what you can actually do now. Let's say with the nowness of the energy community. Making an example, in Italy, for this moment, it is totally pointless to put out a demand response model which actually controls assets. No one's going to remunerate that value, okay? Whereas it's super urgent now to have an IT solution which actually manages the community, okay? More from a community engagement and reporting system. But maybe in 6 months' time this will change. We don't know, so you have to be ready. But if you go now to a household and propose what's coming in 6 months, they don't understand you. I mean, they just say, no thanks. I mean, this is too much hassle for me, it's not on. And this is obviously one of the problems we've had in HESTIA, no? And so purpose again, because it's purpose that we can drive the aggregation, whether it's individualistic or common. But then once we have aggregated these people, we need to fidelize them. We have to keep them in place. And now, I don't have an answer, actually. I really don't have an answer on how to make engagement sustainable, because you really need a lot of engagement, okay? So the only answer I've had so far is to find a more intense support, public support in the engagement phase. So let's say the burden of the engagement, which is relevant, should be carried probably by public spending, okay? Because it's relevant. It's a social project, so it's really relevant and long-standing. I hardly think it can be sustained by the local energy community itself in terms of capital expenditure or operational expenditure. But going back to the DR solutions, so to the IT solutions, they have to be a marginal cost. They have to be really, really marginal, okay? And this brings an end to my contribution, which at the end of the day, if we don't really put our focus on how to create the conditions to have very large energy communities, and thus very large groups of buyers of technology, it's going to be really, really difficult to scale up the IT, let's say, the market for demand response solutions in energy communities. It's a different ballgame altogether if, obviously, these softwares are mostly addressed to DSOs and, let's say, private operators to manage the grids. This is our main takeaway in terms of business model. I wanted to focus on that and also trying to get a different angle at our discussion. Thank you.
So for Q&As, we do have a dedicated session. So we move now to the next presentation that is going to be given by Antonis and Sivart for the Accept project.
So I think Andrea managed to keep us awake very well. He raised a lot of issues. Probably with most of them, I would disagree. So I think we have grounds for another session after 5:30 or so. But let's not go into too many details at the moment. I completely disagree with scale, with the issue of the necessity of scale. But okay, so Just to give you some context about this presentation. So the idea here was to show you a few things about the tests that we actually did during the project, because we really strive to do tests in real-life environments, in the homes, with real people, and so on, as opposed to several past attempts, which are mostly simulation-based. So the idea here, I'll just skip quickly over the slides because basically they're just, if you like, a documentation of what kind of tests we did. So we did control automation tests at the level of a household. This means automated asset control within a household, right? And we tested different use cases with different loads. So here you see small split units, electric water heaters in 18 households in these 3 countries, so the Netherlands, Spain, and Greece. We tested control automation at the building level. So this is a building that has one central heating cooling system. And of course, that's completely different in terms of engagement, first of all, but also completely different in terms of technical solution you need. And it's also different, even though it's a heat pump, it comes with its own storage tank. So you have more degrees of freedom there to leverage to gain something, to find basically flexibility. This was tested in Switzerland, sorry. And then there were some use cases that were simulated, right? So we go collect all this data from all these different pilot sites, and for some cases, for example, the peer-to-peer flexibility trading, we had to go to a simulation route. So it was not possible to actually try this out in the real buildings. Now, in terms of results, what did we manage to achieve? So first of all, at the level of community members, so see this as, for example, as a household, as a home. We set out to achieve energy cost savings through real-time tariffs, through energy efficiency, through whatever means we could find possible. So there we had the maximum we can claim that we actually achieved was about 15%. On average, we achieved about a 6% of savings of electricity cost on these households, which is not very impressive, but it's reasonable. And it's something to start with, right? Especially given the fact that we control very specific loads, right? Due to limitations of not of technology so much, but if you like, the breadth of the solution we had available in terms of how many assets we could actually get access to. We're also conducting tests to optimize self-consumption, but here the results are still under assessment, so I cannot unfortunately give you some figures. I saw a figure of 50%, I think, claimed by HESTIA. I'm not sure. I think it was by HESTIA, which is, I found quite impressive. So if that's actually the case, I think it's a very good result. I think in our case it will be a bit less, but still relevant to make a difference. Now, we also asked our users also for some, if you like, soft conclusions in the sense of willingness to pay for such a system, right? So, okay, we did all these tests with you as guinea pigs. Did you find it useful? Do you see some value? And the results were, I think, pretty good, right? Especially 70% of willingness to pay. It doesn't say how much, right? Because you also need that figure to make the value proposition stick. But still, you see that people respond with, okay, I'm open to this. You know, I'm open to discuss this, which I think it's a good result. Now, in terms of community level results now, so aggregation of homes or aggregation of people, there we also see, I think, reasonable results. So on the left hand, we have flexibility potential, right? So how much flexibility can I extract from all these assets? Of course, there are limitations. You don't want to annoy people. You don't want to reduce their comfort, and so on and so on. Assets have their own limitations, technical limitations. So at the end of the day, there are cases and assets where you can extract a lot of flexibility, up to more than 70%. But I think on average, we have a 17, 18% of flexibility of demand of households that we can work with. And again, I think that's a reasonable value. And in terms of the flexibility we managed to activate and deliver to the grid, I think, well, the bottom line, the line on the bottom says it. It's about 60% of the potential one, right? So if we, well, let's say we claim we have 10 kilowatts, 6 of these we actually manage to deliver through an automated solution within all the constraints that we said above. So don't annoy the users, work with specific technical systems with their own limitations, and so on. So I think overall, in that sense, we tried things in real life. We got some results that are positive, right? And we are, if you like, encouraged to go on, right? Try further things, see what makes sense, go into the business aspects of this. I mean, we did a lot of work on the engagement aspect, so trying to get the people in, help us to test the solutions, expose them to all these things, get their feedback. Right? And now I think we have the grounds basically to move on and say, okay, well, what can I actually do with this kind of flexibility? Now, of course, there are further impacts on the energy community like awareness raising and so on, recognition by the communities of the opportunities that are out there, which is also important because there are some communities that are very, if you like, not so much business oriented, but oriented towards organic growth by finding some funds they can use in order to grow further, right, and do more things. There are other communities that are more idealistic, and they only care about the environment and maybe, install a PV and try to share the energy. These are, there are more access to these extremes of, what was it, the common versus the individualistic, right? So there are further access in this issue. So going a bit to what happens beyond. So what we did here is we asked our pilot partners basically to tell us a few things about how they see the exploitation of their experience, what they gained from this project, how they plan to reuse it, and so on. So from Spain, there's already another Horizon project that's going to build on these results, on the solutions, and try to exploit these things further and go more into this business things, find a way to use this flexibility effectively. And also, of course, here in Spain, we were lucky in the sense that we had the involvement of an energy community and a retailer in the Spanish pilot side. So we saw both perspectives. So a community which I would say is very idealistic, right, for the environment and the common good and so on, and then you have a business, an energy retailer, which has a different perspective. And it's good to put these two actors together to try to coordinate and do something. So my understanding is that both of them want to look into how to further use the outcomes of this project. Now in Switzerland, this is a special case because they are already pretty active in developing energy communities. I think if you like, definition of energy communities is a little bit different in Switzerland than in the European Union. But still, we are working there with a DSO who is very willing to create energy communities and involve the people there in such activities, which is a nice and a strange experience at the same time. But basically, we see that demand response also is quite useful there. In the case of the Greek pilot side, we see they're also involved in other projects, and they want to take over the results from this one to further work on them. And of course, there we also had the energy retailer on board. So the partner in the project is actually a big conglomerate, but they have an energy retailer, Protergia, who is also very interested in energy services, as Pablo was mentioning before, for them. So they see their at least value in continuing to look into these solutions and trying to market them. As well as further, let's say, working on this, they have a smart city project there in the settlement where we run the pilot sites. And of course, now they have some more infrastructure and they're continuing to build on this in order to transform this into a smart city, smart village, whatever. So, and then we have our special guest for tonight, who is going to give us a few more details about the exploitation route in the Netherlands, which has been already ongoing for some time now, and they already have nice results too.
Yep.
In 1 or 2 minutes.
1 or 2 minutes. Yeah, so it's great to finish because I fully agree with your story. I'm Siwas Omer, I'm chairman of the Dutch Federation of Energy Communities. We got into this project knowing nothing about flexibility, tools, technology, anything HYPERTECH did, it was abracadabra for us. And we were supposed to use all the materials they would develop out of this project. So we, for 2 years, had to think, okay, what does that mean for us as a federation? We thought, oh, we'll just sell some boxes later, but we understood that if we wanted to need all these smart technologies, all these algorithms, all these models, we needed to organize the actual whole community. Not just the community itself as an organization, but also the complete value chain in the energy market. And I don't know if there's somebody from the commission, but I was talking to them about energy communities and them accessing the market, and they said, you have to understand that the European energy market is more difficult than the steering thing of the NASA rocket. And you guys as citizens want to participate. So that put us as a federation, that realization put us on a federation on a path where we work together with local energy communities. And we as energy communities don't work with economies of scale, we work of corporations of scale. So by cooperating with a lot of communities, we can create scale. So what we did, it was out of the scope of this project, but the project made us realize what we needed to organize, and we set up a new project called Local for Local in the Netherlands with 13 partners, 7 million euros, is to organize the full value chain that is necessary to share energy with your members, and then all of a sudden it becomes valuable to have these technologies and to develop these technologies. So my point was, and that's what we also wrote in the policy description, is you need to create a market for all these technologies that you're developing. You're pushing a lot of resource and innovation money into developing a lot of stuff, but there's no market for it. There's a need for it, but the actual organizations that are going to use it, that can use the whole value chain of energy so they can use these technologies, aren't there yet. So you need to also invest in the process costs of setting these up, giving them position, making sure that the legal framework works for them, and then you actually get these two worlds of technology and energy communities, you get them together, and then you have a market for everything that you develop in these kind of things. Was that within 2 minutes?
Thank you, Antonis. Thank you, Sivart. So let's move to our last project presentation. It's going to be given by Christian. It's about the center results relevant to energy communities or not energy communities. If I understood correctly, you were not discussing that much about energy communities within Accept, but engaging many stakeholders, occupants, but not in the form of an energy community, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see the results of your presentation, and afterwards we can move to the Q&A session.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. And as you said, our main purpose was not to strengthen or to build energy communities, but maybe by coincidence, we have something like energy communities now. And as we said before, some 200 involved household consumers at the Austrian side and 100 each at the Finnish and at the Spanish demonstration side. And as I outlined in the previous presentation, it's also in a way interesting to see that there's a kind of self-fulfilling engagement, and people in these projects ask us, do we have any follow-up projects? And they now also start to engage in some local groups and to develop the project results further. And what I would just like to outline is basically what were the results that we have seen, and also I have to excuse myself for the fact that there are no real KPI validations at this point of time, because we are still running 6 months until the end of March next year, and so we are now in the process of the business model development and also of the KPI verification. As I said before in the session, Sender is not only about demand response and flexibility, but also about integrating additional sensors into the project to offer some home services, or maybe you want to call it smart home services. And that was also in our initial co-creation approach a wish of the consumers at our demonstration sites, that they want to integrate smart home solutions together with demand response and flexibility solutions. The Sender project consists of some 15 partners from 7 European countries, and we have 3 demonstration sites. The one is in Spain with Alginet, then we have a demonstration site in Finland, and also a demonstration site in Austria. So also from the, let's say, temperature level and geographic and societal diversification in Europe, I think it's a quite good coverage that we have in the project. What do we demonstrate at the different sites that are part of the project? In Alginet in Spain, our partner is the local distribution energy system operator, and we have there on the one hand PV for self-consumption, and also massively increased the self-consumption at the site. We operate HVAC systems and also electric boilers. And these electric boilers in Spain are not the ones that I showed before from our project partner NXTech, but in Spain we control standard boilers and not the very sophisticated ones that are operated in Finland and in Austria. Same demo setup for the Austrian energy site, and that's run together with the Energy and Innovation Center at a small town called Weiz, some 26,000 inhabitants. And there we had a very high feedback from the inhabitants, and as it was pointed out before, we used social media channels, we used WhatsApp, we used LinkedIn, and tried to activate consumers based on these channels. But then there was one article in the local newspaper, and basically this one article provided half of the consumers to us, because it seems to be that many of our users in Austria are in an age group where they don't really go for the social media, but more for the print media, and so therefore also this very traditional way of acquisition was very successful. In Finland we have 2 demo sites, one in Espoo, the other one in Tampere, and the opportunity that we use there in addition to the other 2 demo sites is the EV charging, and we have approximately 100 households engaged there, and we operate our solution currently at some 10 EV charging stations and try to support the DSO by these activities and to flatten the load based on this installation. What are our use cases? Use cases are more or less the same for all of the pilot sites. On the one hand, explicit residential demand response, then the maximization of the use of renewable energies, so also the increase of self-consumption in this context, the minimization of the electricity bills, basically by the load shifting and using of dynamic pricing and using of low-cost price periods in the system. And in addition, as I said before, remote monitoring and control of home devices to make the portfolio that we offer a bit more complete and move away from pure electricity appliances. And finally, we wanted to implement the peer-to-peer trading, but as I said before, too many barriers, too many regulations, and therefore this use case 5, peer-to-peer trading, was in our opinion and with our budget and based on the technology solutions that we were planning to implement, not possible in Austria and not possible in Spain. And it would have been possible in Finland, but with a lot of regulatory influence, and we would have, that's an estimation of an external service company, would have needed some 9 months to set up one energy community or one group of energy consumers in order to allow for this peer-to-peer trading in Finland from a legal and regulatory point of view, and therefore we said, okay, it's probably not worth the effort to go this way. And yeah, core objectives of the energy community installations that we do. On the one hand, we want to provide regulatory documents to, in a way, facilitate the implementation of new technologies and the use of these technologies by energy communities. We have successfully included in our activities some 10 different types of consumers regarding age, gender, but also background regarding electricity-related services or no background related to them. Also regarding the age, I think one of our oldest users is in Finland. He is 84 years of age and yeah, still interested in these solutions and also using the sender user interface. And therefore, yeah, a very wide community. And I think the main part of our participants in the demonstration sites are families with children in the age range between 20 and 35 to 38. So that was the highest interest rate group that we discovered in our acquisitions. And our target, as I mentioned before, 400 households. We will see how we end up, at least with some 315, but we are still trying to acquire new households. So therefore, also for a 4-year project, I think this number of involved households is not too bad. Then regarding the forecast quality, we can say now that we achieved at least a 10% increase of the forecast quality compared to other technologies which are in the market or that were used before. And we also have various initiatives, the sister project, like in this context, HESTIA and ACCEPT, but also in other areas of our activities. We are cooperating with other companies that are supported by EU funding, but also with companies that are provided national funding. And therefore I think also this objective to work not only in a silo, but to spread our knowledge, to share our knowledge, that went very good in this project. And finally, the idea is to have a 20% of flexibility potential provided by household consumers. That's not too impressive if we see the numbers of the previous projects, but at least that was our target, and we are very confident that we will over-fulfill this target. And I think I'm just going to skip this one. Yeah, so as we said initially, we were not really focused on energy communities. So how to answer the question, what do we do for energy communities? And therefore, we use some material from our analysis of different business models which are in the market, and therefore try to answer the questions, what can we as sender project do for energy communities, by checking which other companies explicitly market their solutions by saying we have solutions for energy communities. And there is a number of companies out there which are mentioned here. So for example, CleanWatts is providing energy management systems for energy communities, energy optimization. Flexibility services are provided by virtual power plants, and they also handle the community settlements. And in addition, there are other companies like Kiwi Grid, Fleco Power, Bamboo Energy, and another company from Slovenia. And their product portfolio that is marketed out there to energy communities is quite similar. And yeah, therefore, the next step was then to understand what kind of solutions could sender provide that are also provided by commercial companies that are active in the energy community field. And I think one core component which mirrors or reflects what commercial providers offer is the energy management platform, the virtual lab, which is on the one hand a very good tool for testing solutions before rolling them out in the public and in our household sites at the demonstration areas. And on the other hand, this virtual lab and global integrated platform is also running all the processes which are required to connect the different technologies that we have in the project to guarantee their interoperability and to run an optimization algorithm which then offers the best possible amount of flexibility to the market. So therefore that would be one solution from the sender project which will definitely help energy communities. Another one which was mentioned in an earlier session, the supply and demand forecasting algorithm tool by CRS4. Also here, once more, the information, if you receive the slides and click the source at the bottom of the slide, you will see a very sophisticated system which really massively increased the quality of forecasts. And therefore, we do also see from a, let's say, commercial perspective that this kind of supply and demand forecasting algorithm is something which really compete with other commercial offers in the market and might even be better than these existing technologies. Next one is the consumer digital twin by Paragon. As also stated in an earlier session, initially derived from the aeronautic industry, where they used it for the balancing and the seat allocation of long-haul flights. And this kind of technology was then transferred to the electricity industry. And comparing the left-hand side picture and the right-hand side picture, also in this context, the occupancy of a building can be forecasted in a very, very good way. And also this solution is now competing for some academic prizes regarding the forecast quality, and also something that can be provided by the sender project for more commercial use, which might help energy communities. And finally, one other core technology might be the smart charging solution from Trialog for EVs. And the smart charging solution is also, as I said, heavily tested in Finland together with the local DSO. And therefore, that's also something which helps to flatten the demand in the grid, and something which is really comparable to other commercial offers. So there would be even more examples to be mentioned, but I think that's a quite good overview. We had some 11 technology innovations which all could be used for energy communities, but I think looking at the commercial offers which are out there and looking at the results of the Sender project, that's something where we could proudly say we are able to compete with commercial offerings in the market. And finally, what would be the future research focus, or where should we expand the Sender solution in order to become even more competitive if we go into an exploitation phase? On the one hand, we are currently reacting to day-ahead prices. What would be very useful would be to also forecast day-ahead prices. So that's something which might be an area of improvement to even increase the economic potential of the project results. The integration of energy efficiency measures, so that would mean for us also cooperating with the build industry, and that's also something where we see a development where these two sectors, electricity sector, demand response, and building industry, move closer together, where initial projects are jointly developed. So that's something where we should probably promote the project results also in other areas outside of the electricity industry itself. What we currently don't do is to go into intraday markets. So we are focused on the day-ahead market with its spot prices, but we see a huge potential also in an optimization of the project's results in the intraday market. So that would be the next step to create additional economic value. And finally, if we really want to offer a solution to an energy community which wants to manage its consumer on its own, then we would also need to handle the community settlement procedures, so invoicing, billing, credits to individual users, and that's something which is currently done by aggregators. So to have a solution which would be really usable to put energy communities into the position of an aggregator, these community settlement processes would have to be developed. So that's, I think, core insights from the Sender project.
So the first round seems to took a bit longer than expected. We do have around 35 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, for the Q&A session. So now that we've heard from our speakers, I think that we can move to the next part. And I'll kindly ask the attendees to either raise their hands for state any question relevant to what our presenters present, or questions that you think that would make sense to be discussed in such a session. You can also use the QR code to submit your question using the Slido code that you see here. And for the online attendees, through the Bit2Match platform, you can also submit your question. So please feel free to raise your hand for any question that you have. You are not raising your hand, so I'll start with, yeah, please, Sivert. Okay, yep, please go ahead.
Yeah, we have a Swiss speaker, and you're not part of the European Union, and so you didn't have to unbundle your energy system. Was that a benefit in flexibility, or is it hindering you?
Yeah, as Sivert said, like in Switzerland, the electricity system is not unbundled. So it means that, as for example, as a company, where both the DSO, the distribution energy operator, but also the energy retailer, and all the residential clients are basically captive. They cannot change the energy retailer unless they move to different municipalities. And I mean, from a certain point of view, let's say, I guess our users, they're a bit lucky because our company is pushing for innovation. So we're pushing for the creation of energy communities and trying to include more services to them. For example, the management of the energy communities, even if from a pure business perspective at the moment, it doesn't make sense to us to create energy communities because we want user to consume the electricity, not user to have PV and self-consume. So our idea, like for the development of energy communities, is mostly to use them as a tool to implement new services and as a testing ground where users are more environmental aware and where we can test new solutions like the mindset management or local flexibility market even in the future, or dynamic pricing, for example.
Thanks, Ricardo. Apart from that, I think that it would make sense to stay a bit on the debate that we had with regards to scale. You mentioned, Andrea, that scale makes sense to make an energy community valuable, right? So do you have any specific estimation in numbers on what this scale should be to make an energy community viable?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to make a clarification. Obviously, you can achieve scale also with aggregation, and likewise, you can create scale by putting under the same legal entity more energy communities, and with different, let's say, rules and subset. But the scale is king at the end of the day. So scale is not against local. It's just a way of achieving more sustainability. Answering your question. We are seeing that, let's say, a city level, town level, energy community is a good scale. Also in terms of creating the movement, okay? It's the city that moves, it's the local authority that takes lead and promotes aggregation of the community. The community is the city, okay? The town. Obviously, if you go on a big city, you go at district level. If you go on a medium city, you might work on more nucleuses, okay? If you're working on a 7,000, 3,000 inhabitants town or city or hamlet, whatever, we're working over. So we're working on aggregation of 17, 25, 32 municipalities which work together to create the movement, okay? Then you can have different setups. So you can have different setups within this with more entities. If I was to give it economically, so not demographically, let's say, or political geography. A local energy community that has at least 1-2 megawatts of own production, okay, and gradually around it builds aggregation, makes interesting numbers, especially if you're working for the common, let's say, for a sustainable, durable, common project.
Thank you, Andrea. And Antonis, after the clarification, do you still believe that scale doesn't make sense or it's not necessary for an energy community?
Yes, so that was not my comment. My comment was I disagree with Andrea. And the disagreement is the following. Scale is very helpful, but it's not the prerequisite, right? There are several regulatory frameworks that allow you to set up an energy community, even a small one, which is viable and makes sense. Can you do demand response? Probably not. But you can do several other things with such communities. So scale is good. The problem with scale is that before you scale, you have to start. And that's where most efforts die, right? It's, in my eyes, it's equivalent to a startup journey. It has more or less the same requirements, if you like, from the people running this initiative project, call it what you like. So I'm all for scale. It's not necessary, though. And probably all communities, if not all, the vast majority, start small, do something that helps their members, right? Find some value within their small scale in the beginning, and then grow probably organically, because it's very difficult to get financing for energy communities. And by the time that you can achieve scale, either as Seward was explaining, by clustering many efforts together, either there are some successful communities that have grown to become very, very large with tens of thousands of people, then of course different opportunities unlock and you can do many different things.
I think it's only an issue of how you think of an architecture which makes it scalable. First of all, we are in the unknown unknowns, so there is no right answer. I mean, we don't know if it's better one way or the other. We have to go and do it. But if you make an architecture which makes it scalable, and so it's not just, I'm making the extreme, but I don't want to sound negative in this. No, it's just me and my neighborhood, okay? And we want to lock into our moat. And if we make it that way, probably it's not sustainable. If you make it something that eventually will grow, of course you start with one. If you have the backing of funding, for instance, now in Italy there's a strong backing of funding, so you can take the opportunity to scale, no? And then you have to go for scale, depends. But again, I want to make a clarification. Scale doesn't mean profit. I mean, because scale can be, but then something for businesses. Scale can be social impact. I mean, there are wonderful examples in Europe of scaled energy communities which make social impact. So there's also this dichotomy that scale is business. No, scale can be social impact, and I think they should be social impact, in my opinion, if you're talking about energy communities.
Yeah, please.
Well, I will open another point of view. I mean, it depends also on what other possibilities the market offers you. Let's see, in Spain now, it's the market I control now. We can also do a shared PV plant. And the benefit depends mainly on how far away you are from the plant. At first, it was, for us, the energy communities was, or the shared self-consumption was 500 meters. Then 1 kilometer. Now 2 kilometers. Now we are already talking about 25 kilometers. Why not the whole electric system, which is a pool, is the limit? So we can find that a shared PV plant is very easy to start, it's very easy to handle, it's very easy to manage. You don't need so many algorithms, you need so much artificial intelligence. You also have the virtual battery that the retailers offer to the customers, that the surplus energy that you produce in your share of the plant is recognized economically, is simple. I mean, this is the other thing. Is, I mean, the size is important, but what we see in Spain, that we still have a lot of difficulties to start a real energy community. We see this other chance, we see it much more simpler, and people also likes it. People love to produce its own energy. If they don't have, if they cannot have it in the roof, and the plant has to be at 25 kilometers, or if the plant has to be at 500 kilometers, I don't mind. My clean energy is going into the system, I'm taking it from the system. It depends on how much has the kilowatt to pay for the distribution system. And that is a legal decision. So if we make it the whole Spain, why not whole Europe? Well, it's just to promote the debate. It's not a fixed position, it's just a point of view.
Please, Ricardo.
Yeah, like, if I can introduce the DSO point of view to this. Like, for us, if you think of an energy community as a way to, like, tackle grid stability, for example, it needs to be local, because if you have a PV plant 500 kilometers from my grid, it doesn't solve my congestion in the electricity grid. So I think it depends. Yeah, it makes sense to increase the size if you want to increase, I don't know, shared PV plants and residential consumption. But then at the end, the part of the grid, I think it should always be local, because the benefit, so that we don't have to expand the grid and put more investment, because at the end, the grid is like a public service that should be accessible to everybody. You need, like, I think you always need to have a local point of view in mind in order to, especially for demand response and this kind of services.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you all for this discussion. So I've prepared some questions to you guys, and I'll start with accept. Actually, we saw many things related to energy communities in your results, and I'd like to know how do you envision energy communities evolving in the next decade? Actually, what specific steps have you taken to ensure the long-term engagement and empowerment of residents in your project?
Yeah, okay. So, like, from our point of view, I mean, I've also touched this question a bit before, saying that energy communities, for how we are created in Switzerland, they're mostly like a top-down approach, because, let's say, we approach our users saying, like, legally, we can group you into a self-consumption group, and you will save some money on your bills, and your environment will be cleaner, and you can try to optimize your consumption and increase how much photovoltaic energy you're consuming. And so the way I envision them in the next decade, I think there will be a way to mostly democratize energy, because the prosumers, the users, will be part of the energy systems, because at the end, once you decide to install a private or a shared energy, like a PV plant, you're becoming an energy producer, and there are some regulations that you need to follow. And I think for, like, citizens, it's not so clear, let's say, the consequences of when you install a PV plant, but at the end you need to follow certain rules. And moving towards the engagement, I say the first thing is offer an economic incentives, which, being part of the energy community, should be already an economic incentive, because your bill should be lower, but also related to the European projects, maybe offer some kind of discounts through the budget that we have. And to increase the engagement more, I think it's useful to include some community leaders, or anyway people in the communities that are important. In our experience, for example, we included some multifamily buildings, and we had the luck that the owner was actually living in the multifamily building, so we could contact them directly. It was not a real estate company that we had to contact, and then we were just the middleman, and that helped us a lot for the project. Thanks.
Thank you, Ricardo. Next question for Sender, Christian. Actually, we saw many digital solutions, digital tools that your project is being developing. And actually, I'd like to know, can you provide concrete examples of how this technology directly create some benefit for the stakeholders and the energy communities?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think what we proved in the project is that the improve load forecasting and demand supply forecasting, that's something which really creates value For a group of people, because based on this information, we have the opportunity to basically lower electricity prices because we match the expected demand profile much better than it was before. So balancing energy, things like that decrease. So I think that's one core point, and another core point is basically also the digital twin, which can also be used in office buildings, public buildings, and which will also definitely increase the electricity bill because you can steer lighting, heating, things like that in a more efficient way. And yeah, in the back of my head there is still this scale thing. Maybe I can come back to you with one question. So let's say being a native German and being some 25 years in the electricity industry, I saw very early initiatives where some very motivated people said, okay, we built on a school roof the first PV installation. Later on, they collected money and built the first windmill in their village. And then over the years, this approach became economically successful. And then the big established players like E.ON, RWE, whoever, jumped into this field, commercialized it, and now makes the big profits after the groundwork was done by some very early energy communities. If you talk about scalability, couldn't that also be a threat for energy communities? That you say players from areas which were previously not related to electricity now jump into it, use tools like utility in a box where you can streamline processes which were previously in local utilities very personnel intensive, streamline it to 1 or 2 persons, and that then a lot of the users will say the economic benefit that I get from an energy community is not as high as using the scaled up solutions of new entries, and therefore I move away from the energy community.
Thank you so much. And I fully agree with you. And that's why I put purpose at the center of my, let's say, argument. Okay? In our understanding, we are also an investment firm. We also invest. We are not investing in energy communities because we're an impact company. Because we think that energy communities should be community owned. And you have to make them resilient to contrast what you just, let's say, narrated, no, quite effectively. Because otherwise the capturing of the value, goes away. So this is a unique opportunity on one hand to solve potentially a technical problem, okay? Grid stability, but is a, for most, is a unique opportunity to make, to create the conditions for communities to create value. Maybe through savings, maybe through distribution of social dividends. We can discuss on this, but it's the purpose. If the purpose is wrong, goodbye. ESCOs come in and, okay, let's talk about another business is another thing.
Thank you both. One question for HESTIA. It's a Greek word, you know, HESTIA. So, how have you navigated the cultural and behavioral challenges in shifting communities towards more sustainable practices? And what strategies have proven more effective?
Well, to this I should really leave the word to Angeliki, who's much more of an expert, and so you're putting me on the hotspot here. What can I say? I think first of all, and at times maybe we struggle, is really to keep it simple. I mean, keeping it simple and keeping it to the point, and as those that preceded me also to keep it going. It's really it's a long narrative that you have to bring ahead. In my opinion, there is also an issue, there has been and there is an issue of tools. because you really have to find the right tool to engagement. Angeliki questioned before, commented before on the gamification, and other colleagues have commented at the end of the day, maybe all you need is a WhatsApp group, or anyway, it helps, and so on and so forth. So finding really day-to-day, non-additional ways of engaging people is an issue. On the cultural side, on the cultural modern behavioral, because then behavior follows culture, that's something really, as I was saying before, I don't really have an answer, because it takes boot on the ground. I mean, you really have to have people on the ground that can talk to the people, can get into the mood and drive a design. And this is really a big problem. And the only strategies are workshops, are engagement, are discussion, are finding the right way to be not too much intrusive, but present, and so on and so forth. And as also someone said before, how to manage this long process and keep the hype up, no? Quite frankly, I cannot think of a golden touch solution. Last thing is feedback. I very much like someone who before said that you were giving the clear view on the algorithms. I can't remember if it was Accept or which one of the two projects that gave visibility on the algorithms to the test user. I think that is very interesting, because the fear of a black box, whatever it is huge. And now again, keeping it simple but transparent is another, for sure, element. Different countries, different modes. Yes, of course, if you were in Berkida, which is a Sardinian small town with its characteristics. You go to the Netherlands, it was a gentrified environment. If you go to Palaiseau, was, let's say, mixed, complex situations. And it's not my skill, it's their skill. And so they found the right language to go in, and it's really social, psychological and social understanding of patterns, and that's very expensive. And that's why I think someone has to take that cost, at least as things get up.
Thank you, Andrea. Angeliki, would you like to add something?
At the end, I think it's all around this idea of social norms. So what is around, what is normal, what's considered normal in each community, because I don't think we can do any change if we don't understand what we have to deal with, what are the kind of everyday scope of things. So if we set up in each of the different communities what are the socio-cultural norms, then we can understand how to not change them, but how to integrate solutions within them that will help build on them, rather than completely propose change. I also have another comment. Can I do it now? Well, yeah. Okay, so for me it was, it's not quite a question, it is more of a comment, and it has to do with the energy communities and the ethics of care. And it is also, energy communities have popped up as almost like amongst this neoliberal movement of citizens take ownership of everything. They have to now, we have to be responsible for our health and for our energy. So the responsibility moves gradually from a centralized point of view, from a governmental thing or institutionalized thing, to more local and community. And I'm wondering, because we talked about how do we envision these communities to be, but would these communities essentially take this role of perhaps that institutions or governments had for people's welfare and for people's well-being, in terms of we don't only have the people that are able to have the assets and the, both all the conditions, the, ability to be part of a community, but also those that are not able to directly fit in any of these. So I guess it's how we envision that happening. I know, for example, in Greece, there are energy communities that are producing, a load and then sharing some with households in energy poverty, so they can actually give a portion of their energy. So I think it's also nice to have a conscious understanding of how these communities are not just market units or technical units, but also can provide other functions.
If I may make an example on this, we have a couple of, no, actually 4 now setting up, which are being set up as non-profit entities, foundations, participated by local authorities too, as a minority stake or majority stake, depending on the project, co-financed by local companies and or non-profit entities. And that is the moat to make sure that that community is owned by the territory, is not owned by third party, and cannot be sold because it's a non-profit entity. It cannot distribute dividend, it cannot, and then capture, depending on laws, the value and distributes it depending on whatever the committee decides to whoever they want to distribute it to.
Thank you both.
Thank you. For the social activity in Murcia, we have a town, Bullas, where they implemented this. Oh, it's a seed of energy community. Actually, Antonio is very involved in that community that is building right now. They have like this poverty bank that helps people that have, in the risk of the energy poverty. So I think this is very interesting, and I do believe that is where local institutions must be involved in these kind of communities. It's easier just to have this vision to not leave anyone behind. And coming back to the comment I wanted to say first, is sometimes when we say, okay, how much you have changed the behavior of the community with the project. Sometimes it's always a wonderful result how you have increased the energy literacy of the users. Because sometimes they don't know how really, the way they consume, it affects their total consumption, their energy cost. So just open up their mind I think is also very important and something to to consider with all this project. We have seen, okay, we've worked with some users have been involved in a few projects, and in the first one they didn't know anything, and now they ask about the tools. So it's a huge step.
Yes, indeed, this is a great achievement, if I could say so. Then I have a common question for all projects. As always, recommendations with regards to proposals that we have to regulators and policymakers for the energy communities and the tools that have been involved in the whole process. And I'll start with HESTIA. Andrea?
Well, I think the highest priority is to clarify the norms, the rules, the regulator rules for flexibility, flexible pricing, and the like. I mean, we have to turn into facts the potential of leveraging on the flexibility market. I think that's an issue, and possibly, obviously, we will have different possible setups in different European countries, but possibly at least with a relatively common scheme. I think we also need to keep up the funding. Okay, I think we have to keep up to have funding. Mostly to incentivize investments on behalf of energy community members and or the energy community itself, following the logic that I exposed before. I'm ambivalent on the peer-to-peer pricing, frankly speaking. I'm not sure if that is something to be pushed. In a perfect world, maybe yes, but I wouldn't put it as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. What about Accept? Ricardo?
Yeah, I can say, like, since mostly, let's say, regulation is very country-specific, I can say from our experience, we had, for example, there was some lack of regulation in Accept regarding the vehicle-to-grid testing. So I guess one of the first recommendations would be to like push for to regulate innovative solution. But I mean, we are like two sides of the same coin, because regarding energy communities, in Switzerland we had the regulation, so everything was regulated, but the regulation was so stringent, so the scale of the energy community was only from the distribution grid point of view, and you can only basically connect 10 households together without possibility of increasing. Luckily, now the system is changing, and we're allowing virtual communities on a bigger scale. And yeah, I think one major recommendation related also to demand responsive would be to allow dynamic pricing to the final users, at least as an optional, so that the user could do implicit or explicit demand responsive, have a smart management system. I don't know if Sivar wants to add something related to regulation.
Well, we wrote a report on the regulation. So what we saw is that you can write down all regulation, but on a lot of countries there wasn't a strong federation of energy communities to actually communicate with the governments. So if you want these regulations to work, and everything that comes out of it, to standardize the contracts with the DSOs, the whole implementation of what you've written down, you need to work programmatically on it. Like, it won't work when accidentally we were lucky to have the accept money at the time when our regulation was made. So we had we could develop a lot of knowledge and made proposals from the project, but that's just luck. So if you want to structurally have this implemented throughout Europe, you need to like set up a European program of standardization of the whole implementation. And I don't see that happening very soon. You need it on national level. The DSOs, the energy communities, and the regulators sit together and make standardized contracts and implementation programs, but also on a European level. And that's going to take a while. Or else, I call it, you can have a perfect regulation for energy communities on European level or on a national level. Then you have a highway with no barriers, but you have a car with no fuel. Right? So the energy communities can't move forward to actually benefit from everything that you've written down. So we need to really invest on getting that money on the ground in these communities, so they can set up federation to represent themselves.
Thank you, Sigurd. And Christian?
Yeah, I think basically nothing much to add. What I really see in the core of the required regulation are the dynamic prices, because that really will give an economic boost, I would say, to energy communities. And regarding the general regulatory procedures, what I see a bit critical is that if we as a single project give some recommendations to regulators, there's hardly any response from them. If there are public opinions selected on new regulatory proposals, we can provide input, and we also see that it's written. So it might be an idea that various projects which work on regulatory barriers could join forces and then give their opinion to regulators as a group of some 10 or 12 projects, instead of giving it as one project without getting any response. So maybe to increase our power as EU-funded projects in this way.
Thank you, Christian. Is there any other question from the audience? If not, actually, this concludes our session. I would like to thank the participants, the audience, and the speakers for this session. I think that the discussion was quite fruitful. I would also like to introduce and thank Celine, our visual artist, who actually was preparing during the whole session all the visual illustrations that we see here. So my applause to her and the speakers. Thank you all. If possible, please, the HESTIA partners to stay in the room for a while for the picture, the team picture.
right?